So let's start our first analysis, which is the demand calculation based on correlation analysis. Now, consider the example of some data that we already have, which is the data of hospitals, and then the number of employees and the kind of employees that we need to smoothly run the functions of a hospital. So let's say we have to start a hospital, but how many nurses, how many doctors, how many medical attendants will we be needing to operate a hospital consisting of 1000 beds or 850 beds or 900 beds? So, one of the ways of forecasting your labor demand is that you look at the already running hospitals and take their data, and if the number matches, you can approximately hire the number of people that you need in order to staff your hospital that it can run its operation smoothly. Let's say in the market we have the data of the hospitals having 200 beds, 300 beds, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 900 beds. Accordingly, this is what the data is telling us already, that 240 nurses are enough to operate in a hospital where there are 200 beds. Where there are 300 beds, the number of nurses needed are 260. The same way, if you have 900 beds, the number of nurses needed are 860. Now, the problem is that there is no symmetry of the number of nurses required and the number of beds in a hospital. Here, there's an increase of 100 beds, but there's only an increase of 20 nurses. This is what the previous data is telling us. Now, what if we have to start a hospital of 1000 beds? How many nurses will we be needing in order to operate the hospital effectively? Or let's say we are making a hospital of 650 beds and the data is not available. So, how many nurses and how many doctors will we be needing to staff our hospital? So, to do this, let's go to one of our examples in Excel file. Now, this is the data that we already have from the previous hospitals which are already running. If you have number of beds 100, 200, and up to 3000, this is the data of the number of beds, and this is the data of the number of nurses required at different number of beds in different hospitals. This is the number of doctors required in different hospitals. This is the number of assistant doctors, support staff, the cleaning staff, and the reception staff, and you can add up to any number of tasks or jobs which are required to run a hospital. Now, if we look at this data, let's say if we have to start a hospital of 850 beds. So we do not have the exact data. We have the data of 800 beds. We have the data of 900 beds, but we don't have the data of 850 beds. So how many doctors, how many nurses, how many staff will we be needing that our hospital of 850 beds can run smoothly? One other thing is that in this data, we are also considering the shifts, because hospitals have to operate for 24/7. So let's say there are three shifts of 8 hours, or four shifts of maybe 6 hours, or two shifts of 12 hours, but we are taking three shifts per day. Now, what is happening is we are also converting the shifts here. So whenever you have to count the number of employees that you need in any organization, you also have to look at the shifts or the number of hours which are required by the employees to work. So let's say if you need 125 nurses for one shift, let's multiply this with the number of shifts, which is 3. So you will be needing 375 nurses in total per day to run the operations of the hospital. Now, how can we do the analysis? So, one basic simple analysis can be, first of all, if we have to see the trend or the correlation among the nurses and the number of beds, select these two datas and then apply some kind of, let's say, correlation. Let's just take this kind of graph. It is going to give you this kind of correlation. So this kind of correlation is giving us some kind of data, some kind of linear line, that how many people, how many nurses are required to run different number of beds of hospitals. So let's just take it to our slide. And here, if you look at this data, let's say if we require a number of people or number of nurses of a hospital of 850 beds, how many nurses will we be requiring? So as we don't have the data for 850 beds hospital, we can just put a line from here and look at the corresponding line, and let's say it is giving us 1030 nurses required to operate 850 beds hospital. So this is how the correlation can help you in forecasting the demand of the number of people that you required in order to run your organizational functions.